You ever watch your whole life burn down over dessert? It was supposed to be a celebration, my graduation dinner. Honors degree, full scholarship, top of my class. I even wore the stupid medal under my coat, waiting for the right moment to show them. I don't know why I thought they'd care. The Sanders estate was suffocating that night. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, 3 courses I couldn't pronounce. Everyone was pretending to like each other, which meant the wine was flowing and the knives were sharp. Literally and otherwise. Then my father, Gregory Sanders, stood up. He clinked his glass. Everyone quieted. I looked up, smiling like a fool, thinking maybe this was it, the one moment he'd be proud of me. Instead, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're not my real daughter." At first, I thought he was joking. The kind of dry, sick joke he made when he wanted attention. But no one laughed. Forks hovered midair. Glasses froze halfway to lips. My cousin Haley blinked. Uncle Rick choked on his steak. Gregory's voice dropped to something low and guttural. "You mean nothing to me, Emily." His eyes burned. "I raised you out of obligation, not love." I couldn't breathe. My heart stuttered, the blood drained from my face. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my fork. It clanged against the plate like a gunshot. Then he reached into his coat and slammed a piece of paper on the table. "A DNA test. Your mother cheated," he spat. "You're not mine. And you don't belong in this family." I looked to my mother, Vanessa. Cold as marble. Smirking like she'd been waiting years for this moment. "It's time someone told her the truth," she said, arms folded. No one stood up for me. Not Rick. Not Haley. Not Josh, who actually laughed. "She always looked kinda off," he muttered. Every pair of eyes at that table turned me into a stranger. I had imagined this night 1,000 times, but not like this. Not being erased in front of the people I called family. And then, "I want you out," Gregory said, pointing to the door. "Now. Don't come back." I stood. Or tried to. My legs barely held me. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Years of swallowing pain had stolen my voice. I was halfway to the door when it happened. Crack. A cane struck the hardwood. Everyone turned. Walter Sanders, my grandfather, the man who built this empire from nothing, who once stared down generals and walked away the winner, was standing. He hadn't spoken much all night. Just watched. Waited. His voice was gravel and thunder. "You shouldn't have said that." Gregory frowned. "Dad, what are you? You shouldn't have said that." The air went still, like the house itself was holding its breath. Walter turned to me. "Emily, stay right where you are." I froze. He reached into his blazer and pulled out a thick yellow envelope. With the force of a judge handing down a verdict, he threw it across the table. It landed beside the DNA report. "Read it." Gregory grabbed it, still smug. But as he flipped through the pages, I watched the color drain from his face. "This," he stammered. This can't be real. You forged this." Walter didn't flinch. "That document confirms Emily is not only my granddaughter, she is the sole heir to the Sanders estate." Gasps rippled across the room. "I made the change the day she was born," he added. Vanessa's jaw dropped. Rick stood up. Haley whispered, "Wait, what?" like it was some kind of sick game show reveal. Walter walked around the table. Cane tapping, slow and deliberate, until he stood in front of me. He pressed another envelope into my hand. "This is for you, Emily. Every deed. Every asset. Every account. You are the future of this family. You always were." I couldn't even speak. The words just broke something open inside me. Then Walter turned back to Gregory. "She's not leaving tonight, son. You are." Gregory's mouth fell open. "Dad, you can't, get out. Before I have security drag you out." And just like that, the man who had raised me, or pretended to, crumbled. He dropped to his knees. "Emily," he whispered. "Please. I didn't mean it. I didn't know." But I turned my back on him. I didn't walk out of that room as a daughter. I walked out as a storm. Outside, the air was colder than it should have been. I think it was shock. Or maybe freedom. Walter followed me onto the porch. Sat beside me on the bench like it was just another Tuesday. "You all right, kiddo?" I nodded, numb. "I don't know what just happened." He smiled faintly. "You finally saw them for who they really are. And they saw you for what you've always been." I looked down at the envelope in my lap. It felt heavier than it should have. Inside was everything they thought they could keep from me. "Why did you wait so long?" Walter's eyes turned to ice. "Because I needed you to stop needing their love before I could give you your power." It landed like a blade. Sharp. Honest. Final. But he wasn't done. He looked me dead in the eye. Gregory thought he could bury the DNA test. But what he didn't know, he paused, was that your real father was a man named Michael Reeves. I blinked. What? He was a soldier. A hero. He died before he could meet you. But he saved my life. And I swore to him I'd protect his. Something in me cracked wide open. A name. A story. A ghost I never even knew I carried. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the window, envelope clutched in my hands, heart split between rage and revelation. They had tried to erase me, disown me, shatter me, but they didn't realize one thing. I wasn't the girl they kicked out. I was the woman now holding the keys. And starting tomorrow I would tear down everything they built on lies. Brick by brick. Grief hits strange when it isn't about someone dying. It's about realizing they were never real to begin with. For 2 days I stayed at the estate. My estate. The rooms were quiet now, but not in the haunted way. In the cleansing way. Like the whole place had finally exhaled after years of holding its breath. Walter moved through the halls like a sentinel. Proud. Calm. But watchful. He knew I wasn't okay, and he didn't try to fix it. Just made sure I didn't break. The morning of the meeting, he stood at my door with a black suit draped over his arm. Wear this, he said. It's what your father wore the day he was promoted to captain. I ran my fingers across the fabric. Crisp, strong, heavy with meaning. My real father. He nodded once. Michael Reeves. A better man than any Sanders who came before you. When I walked into the boardroom of Sanders International, the name was still etched in gold across the marble. But for the first time I didn't see their legacy. I saw mine. The receptionist stood so fast she knocked over her coffee. Miss Sanders, do you have an appointment? I didn't even blink. No. I have a deed. Walter was beside me. Cane in one hand, power in the other. In 10 minutes the room was full. 10 board members, mostly men. Polished suits, smug eyes. Some had been with the company since before I was born. Others had coasted in under Gregory's regime. They looked at me like I was the intern who wandered into the wrong meeting. One of them, Troy Mart, leaned back and actually laughed. So, we answer to a college kid now? I didn't flinch. I placed my diploma on the table, summa cum laude sealed in gold. You mean this college kid? Then I slid another folder across the table. You've been embezzling for 6 years, Troy. This audit proves it. His face dropped like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. You can't. I already did. Walter's cane tapped once. That was enough. I turned to the room. This company ran on greed, silence, and nepotism. Not anymore. I'm not here to play CEO. I am the CEO. And if you think I'm bluffing, check your corporate cards. They were frozen an hour ago. Murmurs. Shock. Troy stood up like he was about to fight. This is outrageous. I locked eyes with him. So is firing 200 employees to buy a yacht you docked in Mykonos. He sat back down. Fast. I kept going. If you're sitting here because you earned it, welcome. If you're here because you were friends with my father, your time is up. They didn't see it coming. That was their mistake. That night I sat on the rooftop. The city lights stretched out like stars that finally came close enough to touch. Walter joined me, carrying 2 mugs of cocoa. You shook them up today, he said, smiling under his breath. They underestimated me. He nodded. They always do. Until you hit back. I stared into the distance. I don't want to rule through fear. I want to build something better. Then do it. Rewrite the name. We clinked mugs. But my peace didn't last long. The next morning the gates buzzed. There's a man at the door, the guard said over the intercom. Says he needs to speak with you. Urgently. I stepped out onto the driveway, heart already bracing. It was Gregory. The man looked like a shadow of himself. Wrinkled suit. Pale face. His shoulders sagged like he hadn't slept in days. Emily, he started. Voice hoarse. I crossed my arms. Steeled my breath. You're trespassing. He flinched. I didn't know what your mother did. I thought you were her betrayal, not mine. My blood ran cold. So that's what I was? A walking crime scene. He reached into his coat, pulled out a velvet box. Inside was a simple silver chain. Sapphire pendant. Michael, your father, gave this to me before his last mission. Asked me to give it to his daughter one day. I stared at it. Felt my throat tighten. And you kept it locked away? He nodded, shame weighing down his voice. I didn't think I deserved to give it to you. I looked him in the eye. Hard. Is this supposed to make it better? He didn't answer. I handed the box back. Then paused. No. This wasn't from Gregory. It was from Michael. So I took it. Opened it. Wore it. Not for him, but for the man I never got to meet. The man who did want me. Gregory's voice cracked. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I nodded. Good. Because you're not getting it. He walked away slowly. And I didn't watch him go. Later that night, I found a hidden safe behind a painting in the estate. Walter had whispered the code to me. Inside were deeds, ledgers, sealed letters. One was addressed to my daughter, Emily. It was Michael's handwriting. I read it sitting on the floor. No lights. No noise. Just the sound of my own heartbeat. I may never hold you. But I want you to know you are mine. Not by blood alone, but by legacy. You are not a mistake. You are the future. The world may lie to you, but you hold truth in your veins. That truth will make you unstoppable. By the time I finished, I was crying so hard I couldn't breathe. But it wasn't sadness. It was fire. I wiped my face. Stood up. That was the night I stopped surviving. And started building. Not to prove myself, but to replace everything they poisoned. The empire they tried to keep me from? I would make it unrecognizable. They thought disowning me was the end of the story. It was just the start of mine. 3 weeks after I took over Sanders International, I had already uncovered 2 embezzlement schemes, fired 5 executives, and found out my father had used the company's resources to fund a private investment firm. One not listed in any official document. They called me ruthless behind closed doors. Good. Because I didn't come to make friends. I came to take back everything they built on my silence. I spent nights combing through ledgers, emails, black budget projects buried so deep they practically screamed guilt. Walter helped quiet, sharp, old school. We made a hell of a team. One night, I found a line item labeled Legacy Reserve Fund. Millions moved through it, to nowhere. So I called an emergency board meeting. They showed up in suits and smugness, already bracing for a lecture. I didn't give them one. I gave them evidence. For years, I said, you've funneled millions through shell companies. This document ties you directly to fraud. And I have bank statements to match. Silence. Troy Mard, still reeling from his first strike, leaned forward. Where did you get these? Where do you think? I said. The same place your arrogance left them, in plain sight. The room exploded. Arguments. Denials. But they all shut up when Walter stood. If any of you think we'll be blackmailed into silence again, he growled, you don't know my granddaughter. They folded. One by one. Offers to resign. Whispers of settlements. Some begged. Some threatened. I recorded everything. Then came the dilemma. What do you do when justice means ruining lives, even if they deserve it? Some of these men had families. Employees under them who weren't guilty. I could go nuclear, or I could cut strategically. I chose both. I offered them one way out. Retire quietly, surrender assets, and confess to internal legal, or I go public. My lawyers backed me. Troy refused. That night, someone tried to break into the estate. Security caught him. Masked. Armed. Didn't say a word. But I already knew who sent him. I walked into Troy's office the next morning. Alone. Unannounced. He was standing at the bar pouring whiskey at 9 a.m. You really sent a guy after me? He turned. Smiled without warmth. You've made powerful enemies, Emily. Good, I said. Because I'm not here to play. He stepped closer. Tried the intimidation act. You don't understand this world. Your father shielded you from it. But I built it. I leaned in. No, Troy. You infected it. And now I'm the cure. He laughed, a cruel snort. You're nothing without the Sanders name. I smiled. That's why I changed it. His eyes narrowed. What? I pulled out a folder. Filed the day before. Reeves International. Effective immediately. Legacy rebranded. He opened it and paled. You can't, I did. You built a kingdom of glass, Troy. And I brought a hammer. I walked out before he could answer. That afternoon, security escorted him out of the building. Walter and I watched from the top floor. That was bold, he said. That was necessary. But not everyone was happy. Later that evening, I got a call. Blocked number. You think you've won? The voice hissed. You think this is justice? Wait until you see what your mother has been hiding. Click. I stared at the phone. Vanessa. Of course. I hadn't heard from her since the letter I burned. But now? She was stirring. I went back into the estate records. Not the company. The family vault. Walter had kept everything, even things I think he meant to forget. There it was. A sealed folder labeled Michael Reeves, classified. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside were photos, letters, deployment records, and one document that shattered everything. A letter signed by Vanessa. Handwritten. She knew. She always knew. That Michael was my father. That Walter had named me heir. That Gregory wasn't. But she stayed quiet, not out of fear. Out of strategy. She let Gregory believe the lie so he'd keep her secure. Let him rage against a child that wasn't his. Let him weaponize his shame. And she watched it all like a queen feeding dogs scraps, never getting her hands dirty. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just betrayal. This was designed. Vanessa didn't fail me. She planned me. Walter walked in to find me gripping the letter, eyes burning. She knew. He sat beside me, quiet. She knew what it would cost you. And she chose it anyway. I stared at the fire. The one I couldn't put out now, even if I wanted to. She built this whole lie. Yes, he said. And now it's your move. That night, I sent a message to the only address I had for her. Vanessa, I know everything. I'm not looking for revenge. I'm looking for a reckoning. You have 48 hours to show your face. Or I show the world. When I was little, I used to think silence was safety. That if I just kept quiet enough, still enough, obedient enough, the storm would pass over me and strike somewhere else. But storms don't care how quiet you are. They come anyway. And that morning my mother did too. She didn't call. Didn't write back. She walked straight through the gates of the Sanders estate like it still belonged to her. Like nothing had changed. Except everything had. Vanessa Reeves, still using the Sanders name like a brand she hadn't burned, wore black heels, designer glasses, and a stare as sharp as a scalpel. She didn't hug me. Didn't ask how I'd been. She just sat down in the parlor and said, "You finally opened the vault." My hands tightened around the armrest. "You used me. For years." She smiled. Cold. Familiar. "I survived, Emily. I did what I had to do. Your father wasn't supposed to find out about Michael. That was never part of the plan. So you let him hate me." "Gregory hated everything," she said, brushing invisible dust off her coat. "You were just convenient." Her words cut deeper than screams ever could. "You could have stopped him. And lose my place? My protection? My legacy?" Her head tilted. "Don't be naive. I loved you the only way I could." My voice dropped. "Then you've never known love." She leaned in. "Here's how this ends, darling. You have the company, the estate. Congratulations. But you don't want war with me. I know people. Secrets. How this game is really played." I leaned right back. "You taught me, remember?" That knocked the smirk off her face. "You've spent your whole life pretending to be invincible," I said. "But I know exactly how fragile you are." I tossed the folder on the table. Letters. Blackmail. Every dirty move she made against Gregory, against me, against the company. "You've got 24 hours. Walk away quietly or I take this to the press. Thyras. The Veterans Committee. Your entire world burns." Her lips parted just a little. A crack in the mask. But only for a second. Then she stood. "I should have ended this the day you were born." I didn't flinch. "You tried. But I was the fire you couldn't put out." That night, Walter and I sat in the war room. That's what we called the old study now. Plans. Names. Contingencies. We'd drawn a map of our enemies and allies. Vanessa sat dead center. "She won't walk away," I said. Walter nodded grimly. "She's too proud. Too poisoned by her own ambition." I pulled out a file labeled Phase 3. "Then we force her out. And we clean house for good." By morning I was ready. My legal team issued a motion to freeze Vanessa's remaining assets. Her personal holdings were tied to shell companies linked to bribery and illicit donations during Gregory's term as CEO. 2 hours later, she countered with a lawsuit claiming I had falsified inheritance documents and coerced Walter. The press got wind. The story exploded. Disowned heiress accused of forgery in family empire war. I was trending before noon. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd already prepared. I stepped in front of the cameras that afternoon, sapphire pendant gleaming, Walter by my side. The Sanders-Reeves Foundation stands on transparency, truth, and legacy. I will not let a history of abuse and betrayal define what we build next. Behind me, screens displayed donation records, scholarship statistics, and the audit logs that cleared my name. But I wasn't done. My mother wants the world to believe this is about inheritance. But it's not. It's about power. And I won't let it be wielded by the people who used it to destroy others. Reporters asked questions. Cameras flashed. And the world began to see her mask crack. That evening I got a text. Blocked number. Just 5 words. Check your father's will. I ran. Straight to the vault. Safe opened in seconds now. And there it was. A smaller, leather-bound folder. Gregory's original will. The one before Walter changed everything. Inside? A clause. If Emily Reeves is proven illegitimate, all assets revert to the board. My breath caught. The lawsuit wasn't about reclaiming power. It was about stripping it from me and giving it back to the same men who had nearly buried the company in corruption. It wasn't just Vanessa's move. It was a coup. I stood alone in the ballroom that night. The same place I'd been disowned. Except this time I wasn't the broken girl trying to be loved. I was a woman standing at the edge of the fire, deciding whether to burn the past or build something new from the ashes. Walter found me there. You okay, kiddo? She's trying to erase me again, I said. Legally. Publicly. Permanently. He looked at me for a long time. Then maybe it's time you stop playing defense. What are you saying? He stepped forward, eyes fierce. Finish it. Not just for you. For Michael. For every lie they told. For every time they made you feel small. Go to court. Take the stand. Show them what truth looks like when it fights back. I stared at my reflection in the ballroom mirror. Same face. New fire. Then I'll give them a war. 2 days later, I stood in court, under oath, before the judge, the press, the family who tried to erase me, and I told them everything. The abuse. The manipulation. The betrayal. The truth. I opened the vault not just metaphorically, but literally. We had exhibits. Letters. Forensics. Witnesses. Vanessa tried to smile through it. Pretend it was fiction. Until my uncle, Michael's brother, stepped into the courtroom and read a letter Michael had written on his final deployment. If I don't come back, tell my daughter that I loved her before I even knew her name. Tell her she is not the product of shame. She is my legacy. The courtroom was silent. Even Vanessa looked human. For once. But it didn't matter. I wasn't doing this to destroy her. I was doing it to end her control. The judge called recess. Verdict pending. Outside, cameras surrounded me. Miss Sanders, do you think you'll win? I looked straight at the lens. I already did. Because I didn't let them rewrite my story. I wrote it myself. The courtroom was cold the morning of the verdict. I wore black not for mourning, but for war. A quiet, final kind of war. Walter sat beside me, sharp as ever, hands steady on his cane. Michael's pendant hung just above my heart, catching the light like a signal flare. Across the aisle, Vanessa looked untouched. Ice in human form. Her lawyer whispered things in her ear she already knew. You might lose. But she didn't flinch. She thought she had one last card to play. She was wrong. The judge entered. Everyone stood. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. This court has reviewed all evidence, he said, voice clear, including testimony, documentation, and certified forensic reports on both wills and familial records. My breath caught. We rule in favor of Emily Reeves Sanders. All assets, titles, and leadership rights remain solely under her name. The court finds no fraud or coercion. Gasps. Flashes. The room tilted. But I stood still. Because this wasn't joy. It was justice. Vanessa didn't look at me. She stood, turned, and walked out without a single word. Not a blink. Not even a breath. A ghost. And I let her vanish. Because I wasn't the child reaching for love anymore. I was the woman who built her own throne. But the past wasn't done. That evening, as I walked through the front gates of the Sanders estate, now fully transformed into the Reeves Foundation headquarters, one of the guards stopped me. There's someone asking to see you. Says it's urgent. I followed him down to the lower drive. And there he was. Gregory. Thinner. Paler. Slower. But his eyes, haunted. He held out a document. This is the last thing I'll ever give you, he said. I opened it. It was a notarized confession. Sworn statement. He admitted to knowing the truth about Michael years ago and helping Vanessa suppress it. He named the board members who aided them. Detailed how he covered up financial crimes to keep Vanessa's favor. Why now? I asked. He sighed hollow. I'm dying. Cancer. Maybe a few months left. I wanted to leave something that mattered. He looked up at me. You were never the mistake, Emily. I was. I didn't cry. Not for him. But I nodded. You're right. You were. He handed me something else. A small, battered envelope. Inside was a photo. Michael Reeves. Younger. In uniform. Holding a letter, one addressed to my future daughter. Gregory's voice cracked. He never got to see you, but I saw him in you every day. And I hated you for it. I met his eyes for the last time. And now I envy you. He turned, walked away slowly, coughing into a stained handkerchief. I didn't stop him. Some ghosts don't need burying. They need to haunt themselves. 3 months later, the Michael Reeves Memorial Scholarship Gala was held in the same ballroom where I'd once been called a mistake. But that night, it wasn't shame echoing through the walls. It was purpose. We raised over $2 million in one night, every cent going to children of veterans, single mothers, kids who never thought they'd have a shot. I stood on stage, sapphire necklace glowing beneath the lights. I was told I didn't belong, I said, voice steady. But I do. Not because they let me in, but because I kicked the door down and built something better. Applause. Real. Earned. I looked down at Walter and Daniel, my grandfather and my uncle. My real family. And for the first time, I felt whole. Weeks passed. The foundation expanded. We opened 2 shelters, launched a mentorship program, and began talks with national leaders about legacy reform and corporate philanthropy. They called me a disruptor. A revolution in heels. But to me, I was just a girl who finally stopped apologizing for existing. One afternoon, while reviewing letters from scholarship recipients, a little girl, maybe 9, maybe 10, tugged my sleeve. Are you the lady whose daddy didn't want her? I blinked. I guess I am. She smiled wide, tooth missing. My mom says you're a superhero now. I knelt down. I don't have a cape. But you got a necklace. I laughed. That I do. She hugged me. Tight. Like it was the only thing that mattered. And maybe it was. Because in that moment, I understood something deeper than revenge. Redemption isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the small girl who sees your scars and doesn't flinch. It's the second chance you give others because you never got one. A year passed. Vanessa disappeared from public life. Gregory died quietly in hospice alone. The old Sanders board? Gone. Replaced with leaders who earned it. Voices that had once been ignored now shaped the future. And me? I stood on the rooftop one night, holding Michael's photo and the pendant he left behind. You didn't get to raise me, I whispered, but you made me strong anyway. Behind me, the lights of the city pulsed like a heartbeat. My heartbeat. The empire they tried to steal now bore my name. Not built on lies, but on the truth they couldn't kill.